noise. And I'd like to invite Phil from Fostering Network to say a bit about how they're taking an idea from America and planning to bring it to and then scale it in the UK. Phil?
Hello, this is Phil speaking. Can you hear me?
We can, so I think everybody
Okay.
can. Thank you,
Right,
Phil. Thanks for
excellent.
joining
Thank
us.
you. Yeah, thanks for inviting me along. So as you said, our project's not funded at the moment. It's just everything we've learned is through the application phase, and I think that's quite a considerable amount, really, thanks to Louise mainly as our coach. So, yeah, thinking about our program, it's an innovative idea. It's quite simple, which I think why it's been successful, really. The Mockingbird model is a new model for foster care, which looks at the supports of an extended family. So the foster care system will be restructured around a hub home, which will provide respite support and peer support for a constellation of foster families around the hub home. And it's a very simple, innovative idea, which I think is kind of intuitively understood by people immediately, because it's like an extended family where you'd have an auntie or a grandma around the corner who'd be able to provide that peer support. And it's something that the Fostering Network's been interested in for a long time as a membership organisation for foster carers. We see the problems they have in the number of foster carers who cease to foster during the year, the retention of foster carers and the recruitment of them. It doesn't meet the demands for placements across the country. So yeah, we've long been interested in the model, and it was something that was also reviewed by the Rees Centre in their international literature review of peer support for foster carers, and recommended as something that should be looked at in the UK. And we're lucky also to have connections with lots of networks of practice development forums, some of them established through the DFE funded recruitment project. We sit on these fora and participate in them. One of the forums in Yorkshire had already begun to look at implementing the Mockingbird family model within Leeds, although it wasn't quite faithful to the model fully. It was a beginning of looking at how that could be adapted for the UK. So we were encouraged really to really think big about the Mockingbird project and how it could be implemented across England, and really to do it properly. We were helped to think about transposing the model to the UK context and not simply adapting it or reworking it, to own the evidence base that's been developed in the US, to retain fidelity to it. So that led us to think about our role as the Fostering Network would be to actually own the model. So when David was talking earlier about one of the myths of diffusion, that it would simply spread from organisation to organisation, I suppose our role would be we would be as the originator, helping to spread the idea between different local authorities and different fostering services. I mean, we wouldn't be expanding and displacing them, because our role is different. Delivery, front-facing delivery, whereas we'd be about sharing good practice across the sector and scaling up the model. And because of the positive feedback we had about the model so early on, and the guidance we had on the theory of scaling, we began to think about the community of interest and the community of engagement. So we invited additional fostering services to think about participation in our project before it was even launched, so that we could build in this next phase and have opportunities for scaling in the pipeline along in the future. We put out a call for interest through the Spring Consortium and through our own networks, and got quite a big response. I think in part because the case is quite compelling. It's a simple idea. There are big potential cost benefits for fostering services, and an evidence base of improving outcomes for adolescents. So we had quite a large response. We held a briefing session for fostering services, and of those who felt they could participate or would be interested, we started to have one-to-one discussions with them to work up proposals to integrate their delivery into this stage of the proposal. We went a stage further with them we originally thought we would, rather than just having a community of engagements built into the proposal. We were able to gain commitment for delivery from a second tier of fostering services. So we started off with a cohort of 3, and then we managed to get 5 more to commit to participation and delivery within the funded project period. So from the beginning we have a system where we have a first tier and then a second tier, and the project it will set up systems so that the second tier, the fostering services, are delivering it slightly later on in the year. We'll be able to learn from the first tier, and we ourselves will learn from that process of how to engage further communities of participation.
Phil, that's great. Thank you. That's really interesting. Could you say a little bit more about how you're working with each of those sites in the first and second tier to adapt the model to their particular areas, and what's the challenges for that? What's similar or different with each?
How to adapt the model? Well, we're fortunate that the Mockingbird model has been replicated within the US already. It's increased fourfold over the last few years. So they have quite a well-established replication framework. And what we've done is reviewed that and adapted it for the UK context, a kind of a first draft. So that gives us a template for replication within any site. And our delivery partners, we work with them to look at this replication framework and how it will be implemented locally for them. I mean, the framework, it follows quite a structured process where there's a stakeholder engagement process at the beginning. Then you're looking at how to develop local protocols so that the new service is embedded within children's services locally, and how it fits existing policies and practices. And then on to implementation. So there's, to an extent, there's a kind of a bespoke process to follow, but it will be followed locally with central support from us in looking at how to adapt it for local context.
That's great. Thank you, Phil. I've got Louise here, who, as Phil mentioned, worked with Fostering Network as a coach throughout their bid development. Louise, is there anything you'd want to add to Phil's story or ask Phil?
Hi, Phil.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. I just wondered if you could say a little bit more about your relationship with Mockingbird Society in the US, because as you said, they've already taken a model that was developed in a place and effective. They've scaled it sort of within Washington State, if I recall correctly, successfully, and it's starting to spread elsewhere in the US. And so the role of the Mockingbird Society there feels similar to what you're aspiring to do here. And it would be just useful, I think, for people to understand the relationship you've had with them and how the depth of involvement you're asking for from them and helping you to understand and to scale the work here, because I think it's a key component of transferring, for want of a better jargon word, practice from one place to another. You often, I think, you see that the most visible trappings of the practice get transferred, but we often miss the kind of the thing itself. And you're mitigating that in some really interesting ways. I thought it would be useful for people to hear about.
Yeah, I suppose we considered lots of different options because the Mockingbird model is actually very simple, and there are lots of materials available online that you can read about. So one potential option was simply to take what appeared to be the essence of that idea and then implement it in the UK. But really, when you do that, you're starting from scratch in building your own evidence base, and you can't transfer the credibility of that programme. So what we really wanted to do was gain as much support as we could from the Mockingbird Society, and we've had lots and lots of online conversations with them and developed our relationship with them to the point where they're not only going to support us and certify the implementation in the UK, they're going to allow the Fostering Network to work towards becoming a certified provider of the Mockingbird model in the UK. In order to do that, we have to go through a certain process. We have to receive certified training the trainers courses. We can adapt their materials, but they'll be reviewed by the Mockingbird Society. And I think that's vital, because obviously they know all the lessons they've learnt from replication within the EOS, and they know what the pitfalls are. So yeah, they need to certify the materials for the UK as well. We're going to set up an online community as well, so that foster carers who've successfully set up hubs within the EOS can provide peer support and information to UK carers, and that hub will be then subsequently useful for new cohorts that come on board in England.
Thank you, Phil. That's really great additional information. I am in a moment going to ask the audience if they've got any questions for Phil, further questions for David, or reflections from their own work on this topic. So just to give you a bit of thinking time, audience, if you want to start sending messages in through the instant message, or just formulate your questions. While you're doing that, I'm going to ask David Aubrey if he's got any reflections or questions on what he's heard from Phil.
Thank you, Vicky, and thank you, Phil. It sounds fantastic. I just want to draw out really three things that you said that I think are really important for people. And you put many of them in much better ways than I did. So let me just start with what you were saying very early on about the essential simplicity of the model. Great, radical, innovative practices generally have a kernel of fundamental principles that it's very easy for people to grasp. Highly complex innovations are much harder to spread. And so when I talk about inspiring guiding vision, often it's that set of principles that people can readily understand and then think through how they would really work in their circumstances that's really important. The second thing is just to echo again the importance of thinking about this as you have done from the beginning. So the fact that pre-launch, before the launch of this project, you secured not just a set of partners who are going to work with you on the immediate implementation, but as I think you call them, your second tier, which you have, to borrow my word for a moment, grown from 3 already to 5 authorities, and continue to grow those people who are the potential adopters, who don't have to implement now, but can learn now from the work that's going on in other authorities, I think is really, really critical. And begin to think about what those local protocols of implementation might be. So those two things I think are really important. The third is just an observation, which is about what I was saying about social movement. I am very struck in my work that it is often membership organisations, such as Fostering Network, that think more carefully and use their membership and their notions of peer support to create these networks that are fundamental to social movements. So I applaud very much. I'm interested that it comes from a membership organisation, but reaching out to membership organisations, creating alliances and coalitions with membership organisations is a crucial part of growing social movements that enable effective scaling and diffusion. So fantastic work. I'm really interested in it and look forward to seeing how it unfolds.
Thank you very much.
Great. So thank you both of you, and thank you Phil for bravely agreeing to participate, despite the fact that you're kind of mid bidding and don't know whether you're going to be funded yet. So thank you, and that's kind of what this programme is all about. So people who are being funded, people who aren't being funded, building a wider community of learning with the sector, for the sector, is what this part of what this programme is about.